All right. Good afternoon, and welcome to the August 28th edition of Office Hours, presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. My name is Dr. Tisa Silver Kennedy, and I'm the founder and executive director of the center, and I thank you so much for joining me today. Before we get into the questions that have been submitted by our community, I just wanted to give you a brief overview about the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. The center was started in 2021 with quite an ambitious vision for all of Maryland's college and career school students, and that is that they should have the opportunity to achieve these six pillars of collegiate financial wellness. Those are being creditworthy, ready, resilient, empowered, successful, and thriving. And if that sounds like a vision that you would like to get behind, I encourage you to visit us online at mccfw.org to learn more about the center as well as our programs and offerings. You can also submit your questions there using the contact form at mccfw.org/contact. All right. One other piece of business before we get into the questions, and that is I have to issue a quick disclaimer, and that is that office hours is presented for informational purposes only. The information that I present today should not be construed as personalized legal or financial advice. We do our very best to give you the most up-to-date information about what's happening in the world of student loans, but you always have to take that external kind of big picture information and combine it with your personal circumstances. So the types of student loans you have, the career that you're working in, your household size, all of those things should be included in a holistic decision about your student loan repayment strategy. Just tune in knowing that we're answering questions from real borrowers, but everyone's situation is different. So you definitely need to take inventory of your decision, of your situation before you make any decisions about repayment. All right, I just wanted to give a couple of general updates before we get to the questions. The first one has to do with SAVE. We are getting so many questions about SAVE. SAVE stands for Saving on a Valuable Education, and it is the income-driven repayment plan that was announced by President Biden last year. And the first part of that plan was implemented July 1st of 2023. There was a second part that was supposed to be implemented on July 1st of this year, but there were several lawsuits that were filed aiming to block SAVE, and many of them didn't get anywhere, but there were a couple that landed. And maybe a month or so ago, there was a stay placed on SAVE. And with a stay, my understanding is that every part of SAVE that had been previously implemented was allowed to stay and go on. However, the future pieces that were supposed to be implemented on July 1st of 2024 were blocked because of that stay. So everything that had already been implemented was allowed to continue, but any future benefits that had not been enacted yet would be temporarily paused. Since then, there has been a more, I don't want to call it severe, but I can't come up with the right word right now. There's been another action, I guess it's more far reaching. It's called an injunction. So that means that basically all of SAVE is blocked for now until the court makes a final ruling. And that means that people are not able to apply for SAVE right now online. The application is not available. If you submit a paper application, it will not be processed. So pretty much no one can do anything related to SAVE right now. For people who are already enrolled in SAVE, their loans have been placed into a forbearance. So payments are not due, interest is not accruing, but that's also a pause on earning credit toward forgiveness by way of income-driven repayment and even public service loan forgiveness. For PSLF, we can use the buyback to get help, but for IDR, we're not sure what's going to happen with the progress toward that during this forbearance that was forced by the lawsuit, which resulted in an injunction. So we're going to see a couple of questions about SAVE and people asking if they should file paper applications. And before I get to those questions, I just want to give a general piece of advice that we've shared with the borrowers who have reached out to us about that. The online application is not available right now. So the department is not accepting any online applications. The paper application is always available for download, and that's the paper application for both income-driven repayment as well as consolidation. But if you send in those applications by paper, they're not going to be processed either. So you're not really doing yourself a favor by submitting an application by paper. If anything, if the online application comes back up, and you submit an application there too after you submitted a paper application, there could be some delays if you're found to have duplicate applications. So we would encourage people to just be patient, wait for the courts to make a decision about SAVE so that we'll know what's going to happen going forward. But don't try to rush it by submitting a paper application that's not going to be processed anyway. And once processing picks up, paper applications usually take longer. So for now, the general advice is just to be patient, wait to see what happens. On a positive note, the center recently started programming with the universities at Shady Grove over in Rockville. We're hosting FAFSA support and completion clinics on campus and virtually to help students with the 2024-25 FAFSA, because contrary to popular belief, there is still time to complete the 2024-25 FAFSA. I know that some people think, well, school already started, so how can I fill out the FAFSA for this year? There's still time. You have technically until the end of the academic year to complete the FAFSA for the current academic year. We don't encourage you to wait that long. However, you can. So if you have not gotten started with the FAFSA yet, please do go to studentaid.gov and you'll have to log in. You can complete your FAFSA. And if you're a student whose parents' information is needed, they'll have to log in as a contributor and complete it as well. But there's still time. And for those of you that need help, I encourage you to visit us online, and you can find the link to inquire about an in-person visit or virtual support through our FAFSA support and completion clinics that are being hosted by the universities at Shady Grove. And shout out to the team at USG, Gloria and Sean and Solomon especially. We appreciate your partnership. All right. So with all of that being said, we can get into the first question of the day. That question is, I'm considering consolidating my loans and applying for an income-based repayment plan, but I've heard that Mohila isn't processing applications right now, and I'm not sure what my next steps should be. Can anyone advise me on what to do? All right, let's take a look at the answer. So, just a bit of background for this borrower. They reported that they have a $76,000 balance. Currently, their monthly payment is $850, and they cannot afford to make that payment each month. They graduated in May of 2004, but their grace period started in January because they had less than half-time enrollment during their last semester because of an internship year. Fortunately, the person also works at a qualifying employer, so they're eligible. Their employment is eligible for PSLF. So let's take a look at the actual answer for the question. Okay. Direct consolidation loan is something that people engage in to take a bunch of individual loans and combine them into one big loan. Or if you have subsidized and unsubsidized loans, they'll be kept in two larger loans. And the consolidation loan can actually lower your payment because it can lengthen out the repayment term, or you may have access to a cheaper repayment plan through income-driven repayment. But right now, the application for consolidation is not available. No applications for IDR are being processed. No applications for consolidation are being processed. I want to stress that. No applications are being processed for income-driven repayment or for consolidation. So even if you do paper, it's not going to be processed. So for right now, for this borrower, we're suggesting that they complete the application for PSLF because that is available. But just keep in mind that the applications for IDR and PSLF are not available. Also, contact the servicer for repayment options. The best place to begin with repayment options is studentaid.gov and using the loan simulator, but just keeping in mind that right now, the applications for income-driven repayment plans are not available. Even though you can see estimates of what your payment might be, the application to enroll in any of those income-driven plans is currently unavailable. In the worst case scenario, for a person that knows they cannot afford their monthly payment, we would suggest that you contact the servicer and request a brief forbearance. You can look at all of the repayment plans that are available, find the one that's most affordable for you. And if that one still isn't affordable, then the forbearance gives you the option to have your loans placed in a temporary pause where payments are not required. Hopefully, the courts will make a decision soon when it comes to save in the future of these income-driven repayment plans. And once that's settled, then you'll have access to the IDR application again, and hopefully you'll be able to obtain a monthly payment that is affordable, because $850, I know everything's relative, but $850 is a lot of money. And if you cannot afford to pay that, you definitely want to make sure that your loans remain in good standing without you having to pay that $850 per month. All right, so let's move on to the next question. That question is related to public service loan forgiveness. It says, I submitted a PSLF buyback request in March, but haven't received any updates. Could this mean my request got lost? Should I keep waiting, or is it time to submit a new one? This is quite a timely question when it comes to applications that are not being processed. We know that we just came out of a processing pause on PSLF applications that lasted the entire month of May and June, and even went into July. And I'm speaking from my own personal experience. I have not seen my payment count updated since submitting a PSLF application back in April. So my assumption is that the Department of Education is still working through the backlog of PSLF applications. And if something as relatively easy as an employment verification hasn't been updated since April, I would feel comfortable saying that it's understandable why you haven't heard anything about your buyback application. The PSLF buyback is a relatively new option that allows people who already have 120 qualifying payments, if there were some older periods of forbearance or maybe even deferment that had been counted. But for the buyback to work, you have to be at 120 already. You have to have that much qualifying employment for the buyback to work for you. So in this case, the person submitted the application in March. They're wondering what's going on with it. Let's go to the answer for this one. A bit of background first. Good to know the person has 176 months of qualifying employment. That means that they are eligible for the buyback because they have at least 120 months of the qualifying employment. Right now, their qualifying payments are set at 84. The difference between qualifying employment and qualifying payments is that the qualifying payments are what you need to be over 120 in order to gain approval for public service loan forgiveness. So for a person with an account like this, where you have more than 120 months of employment, but you don't have the right amount of payments, that means that the buyback is an option for you, a viable option for you, because you've already satisfied the employment requirement. You just need to go back and have some of those payments actually paid. So in a situation like this, 84 qualifying payments means that those 84 payments have met the requirements to count toward PSLF, but this person needs 36 more months of both the employment and the payments. Perhaps they had a lengthy forbearance, and because of that lengthy forbearance, they've been denied public service loan forgiveness up until this point. With the buyback, this would allow the person to go back and pay the amount that they would have paid for periods when payments are missing. It would allow them to pay the amount they would have paid under an income-driven plan had they been enrolled in an IDR plan at the time. So for this person, it's really good to see. They've got 176 months of possibility out there. 84 have been confirmed, and hopefully of the remaining months of employment that they have that qualifies, they'll be able to find another 36 months that will count toward PSLF and will push them over that 120 threshold. Let's go to the actual answer though, now that we got the background straight. Our recommendation here is not to submit another PSLF buyback form just yet. There's something else on the horizon, which is called the IDR adjustment. We've been talking about the IDR adjustment for a couple of years now, but the adjustment is basically a one-time initiative to give borrowers credit for past periods of repayment that would not typically count toward cancellation by way of income-driven repayment plans. So if you're a person who had lengthy forbearances or certain types of deferments, or even periods where you missed a payment or your payments were late. It's possible through the IDR adjustment that many of those months can count as credit toward IDR cancellation. And if you have the employment, that time could count toward PSLF as well. The IDR adjustment is supposed to be completed as of September 1st. So that's just a few days away from where we are right now. And after the IDR adjustment has been completed, it's possible that you may have more time that qualifies, or more months that are eligible for IDR cancellation or for counting toward PSLF. So before you submit another buyback request, let's wait for the IDR adjustment to see if the count goes up any further. If you don't see a difference in the count in September, then I would definitely encourage you to revisit that reconsideration request. And if you do decide that you're going to submit another one, you can use this language here that's recommended from the Department of Education. It's that I have at least 120 months of approved qualifying employment, and I'm seeking PSLF or a TEPSLF discharge through the PSLF buyback. Please assess my eligibility for the PSLF buyback. If you have more than 120 months of qualifying employment, the buyback would allow you to go back and gain credit for months where you had the employment, but you don't have the qualifying repayment history. So that will require you, in all likelihood, it's going to require you to make some payments, unless it's found that had you been enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan, your payment would have been zero. But the good thing is, if your records are right, you have more than 120 months of qualifying employment. We just need to wait back for confirmation from the department that your buyback request has been granted and you have met that milestone of being approved for public service loan forgiveness. Hope it works out for this borrower. All right, let's move on to the next question. Okay, question is, my employer pays $50 a month directly to Mohila as part of my benefits package, but there's a $5,000 cap on the total amount that they will contribute toward my loans. Should I pause these payments during the save forbearance or let them continue? All right, let's take a look at the answer for this question. I had a follow-up question, actually, which was just for the borrower to consider how much repayment history you have already. And the reason why I asked that is because I was looking at, $50 a month up to $5,000. And I thought, well, that's about 100 months. And I wanted to know how far this person is into the repayment journey. If you've got a long way to go, then I can completely understand asking the employer to pause the payments because you want to make the most of that 100 months. And if you pay something toward, during a period of forbearance, as of right now, it's not going to count toward PSLF anyway. But if you're someone that's approaching the end, of the road of having those 120 months, then I don't know that it'd be worth the trouble. The other thought here too is that if PSLF is the ultimate goal and you're pretty close to it, then really you want to pay the least amount possible. You don't want to make extra payments because, whatever's left over would be forgiven anyway. I only ask about or bring up those considerations because this is not just you making a $50 payment each month toward your student loans. This is your employer doing it. And when the employer is involved, sometimes, it can be a lengthy or tedious process of turning that benefit on, turning that benefit off. Now, I'm not familiar with how that works for this person's employer, so it could be a quick thing, but I don't know that. I'm just going off of, my previous experience with HR and benefits is that for certain things, there is a set period where you can enroll or turn something on. There's a set period where you could turn something off. I don't know that this works the same way, but depending on where you are in the process relative to meeting that 120-month milestone, you might not want to bother them with this at all. So our recommendation here is that you ask your employer about the possibility of applying the payments toward buying back months in forbearance once you meet the requirement of 120 months of qualifying employment. So For people who are worried about not getting credit for PSLF during this forbearance that was imposed because of the save injunction, we know that it's kind of nerve-wracking to not earn the credit because you got the employment and you would make your payments if your loans weren't in forbearance. But thankfully for people pursuing PSLF, this buyback is an option. So later down the road, once you get to 120, you can submit the buyback request to regain credit for these months that you've lost because of a forbearance that you did not choose. So either way, for this person, you have options to help you get over that 120-month milestone. As for whether you want your employer to turn off the benefit, totally your choice. If you're early on in this journey toward 120, I would strongly encourage you to inquire about turning it off because you don't want to exhaust your eligibility for future payments that they could make by having them make payments during a time when payments are not required. So totally your choice, but that's our recommendation here. All right, let's move on to our next question. That question has to do with consolidation. The question is, should I consolidate my Parent Plus loans with my subsidized and unsubsidized loans? If I do, will it affect my eligibility for public service loan forgiveness? Is there a way to consolidate the Plus loan with the other two and still qualify for forgiveness on all of them? All right, that's a loaded question. So let's take a look at some of the background before I get to our recommendation. All right, so for the direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans, these were borrowed 14 years ago, and they have 10 payments left until they reach 120. For the plus loan, this was borrowed 4 years ago and has 109 payments left. So there's a really big difference between the amount of repayment history for the direct sub and unsub loans and for the plus loans. This person just applied for PSLF. However, they've been employed with a qualified public service employer for more than 10 years. So it's quite possible that this person is just 10 months away from achieving PSLF on the direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. That direct plus loan would have longer to go. So let's take a look at the answer. So the consolidation is used because it can bring all of the loans in a portfolio onto the same repayment clock. And during the period to get the greatest benefit from the IDR adjustment, what was happening was that if a person consolidated loans with differing lengths of repayment history, the entire consolidation loan was credited with the amount of history attached to the loan in the portfolio that had the greatest amount of history. So in this person's case, they have 4-year-old loans and 14-year-old loans. If they combine those loans together, then the entire portfolio would be treated as if it had been in repayment for 14 years. And with their 110 months of the qualifying employment, that would place all of their loans as on track for forgiveness by way of PSLF in another 10 months. But currently, there are a couple of things going on. One is that period to get the greatest benefit from the IDR adjustment expired on June 30th. So they're no longer using that maximum count when it comes to assigning repayment history to a consolidation loan, a newly consolidated loan. The other thing is, right now, there's no processing of consolidation applications. So if you go to complete the application online, you'll find that the box that you normally click to get to the consolidation application is usually blue. Now it's gray. There's no way to get to it. If you submit a paper application, it will not be processed. So we have no idea how long it would take. So for the moment, consolidation is pretty much off the table. But once processing resumes, I want this person to be aware of the new rules for how credit is assigned to consolidation loans. Right now, they're using what's called the weighted average. So they would look at the loans that are 14 years old, look at the loans that are 4 years old, and also look at their dollar amounts. The larger loans carry the greatest weight in this new calculation of repayment history. So if the plus loans are larger, that means that your weighted average will skew more toward 4 years of credit. If the sub and unsub loans are larger, that means your weighted average will skew more toward 14 years of history. But you really have to think about whether you want to combine these loans to get them all on one timeline for PSLF. Depending on how the balances are or your risk preferences, you might say, you know what, I've got this group of loans that are 10 months away. I'd rather get those forgiven so that I know I have that forgiveness in 10 months as opposed to taking a chance, putting it all together and delaying forgiveness further. Some other people might prefer to just combine it all together and get it on the same clock, even if that means that the older loans will take longer time to get to forgiveness because everything will be on the same clock now. The other thing that is worth considering is these are plus loans. I do not recall if the question said that these were parent plus loans or just plus loans. If these are plus loans for yourself, then access to IDR plans once the dust settles with all these lawsuits should be you'd have access to all the income-driven repayment plans that are available. If this is a parent plus loan and you combine this plus loan with your sub and unsub loans, then the only income-driven repayment plan that will be available to you is the income contingent repayment plan. And the ICR plan is usually the least affordable income-driven repayment plan. The only way around that would be through a process called double consolidation. And that's something that at this particular time, we would definitely need to have a conversation to review the loans before going that route. The double consolidation is set to go away July 1st of next year. But since you have this borrower has loans that are, up to 14 years old, we would not want them to consolidate and risk potentially losing some credit for anything. It's a very, I don't want to say tricky time, but this is just a very uncertain time in general for student loans. We had, some one-time adjustments and initiatives that are basically closing out in September. We have the double consolidation loophole, as it's called, that's going to no longer be valid after July 1st of next year. We had SAVE partially implemented July 1st of last year with another part that was supposed to be implemented July 1st of this year. And there are a lot of things that we're going to have to see them unfold before we can truly give people, practical advice about what to do in certain situations. But for this particular borrower, right now, consolidation is basically not an option because the applications are not being processed. This borrower has to decide, do I want to get one batch forgiven quickly and wait on the other batch to get forgiven later? Or do I want to put these together in kind of a compromise, that weighted average situation, so that all the loans get on the same clock and they'll just spend definitely more than 10 months in repayment on the newly consolidated loan. So take all of that into account and make a decision based on your preference. All right, let's move to the next question. All right, this question is, my state is about to pay Mohila a lump sum for me. How will this affect monthly payment calculation now that we are in a mandatory forbearance because I was on SAVE? If it is disbanded, will it count toward IDR payments? And should I just try applying for another IDR? This is a loaded question. I do want to say up front before we get to the answer that's been prepared, as for if SAVE is disbanded, will it count toward IDR payments? I think that might be about the mandatory forbearance. I'm not sure what that looks like. Right now, I know during this forbearance, the payments are not counting toward income-driven repayment. So you're not earning credit toward income-driven repayment while you're not making payments, even though this was not a forbearance of your choosing. So I can say that for right now, but I don't know what's going to happen after a decision is made on SAVE. If SAVE is disbanded, I don't know what's going to happen for this forbearance time. So I can't answer that, but I can attempt to answer the rest of your question. So let's go to the answer. All right. When it comes to lump sum payments, you can receive credit for up to 12 qualifying payments toward public service loan forgiveness with one lump sum payment. The way that it's calculated would be They would take the value of your lump sum payment and divide it by your required monthly payment. And that would allow them to determine the number of qualifying payments you would receive in exchange for that lump sum payment. Quick note about lump sum payments. If you make a payment, let's say your employer sends a payment for the entire year, the next 12-month period, they send that payment in January of 2024. In January of 2024, you would not see your qualifying payment count rise by 12 months. So even though you've made a payment or a payment has been sent on your behalf for 12 months, your payment count as in terms of your qualifying payment count for PSLF, that's not going to rise by 12, because to get credit for PSLF, you have to have both the payment and the employment during the same month. So the payment is made in January to cover the next 12 months. Those payments would not qualify for PSLF until you have worked the same 12 months so that you can get the employment credit as well as the repayment credit. So lump sum payments are okay now, but lump sum payments will not speed up your progress toward PSLF. I just want to be clear about that. The other part of this question was about applying for another IDR plan. In the beginning, when I first heard about the stay that had been placed on SAVE, my thought was, oh, okay, no problem. Anybody who's enrolled in SAVE, if they're really just wanting to do something right now to make sure that they keep earning credit toward IDR and PSLF, they can just go back to repay. Or maybe they can enroll in IBR and ride that out until we figure out what's going on with SAVE. But didn't tell people that just because honestly, I had some just hesitation. Like, I don't know that would, I didn't know if that would help. I also didn't know how long it would take for that application to go through and whether the issues with SAVE would have a final ruling before someone's new IBR application got processed. So I thought it best to just say, you know what, let's wait and see how this plays out. And I'm glad that that's what I was thinking, because what we did not know at the very beginning of this SAVE stay, which is now transitioned into an injunction, we did not know that the ruling would affect other income-driven repayment plans. Now we know that all of the IDR plans are affected, and that's why the IDR application is not available online right now. So it's definitely best to just pause, exercise patience, and wait for the final ruling where SAVE is concerned, because then we'll know exactly what needs to be done for people to stay on track toward cancellation, either by way of IDR or that combination of IDR and PSLF. Great question. All right, let's move on to the next question. That is about the FAFSA. My FAFSA application for 2024-25 was approved, and I've accepted loans through my school that are set to disperse on the 16th of September. Is it normal for my FAFSA to show no loans or grants? I was eligible for the maximum Pell Grant and a summer grant, but nothing is showing. This is a great question. Let's take a look at the answer. All right, so the 2024-2025 FAFSA is something that you would complete within studentaid.gov. And once you've completed the FAFSA, it's going to generate something called the FAFSA submission summary. Your school is going to use information from that summary to create a financial aid package for you. That financial aid package is going to include grants, loans, maybe scholarships or federal work study, different types of financial aid that you have been offered based on the information that's in the summary, especially one figure called the Student Aid Index. Whatever school you're going to, they're going to use that SAI to assess your eligibility for both federal and non-federal student aid. There is another place where you'd have to go to see kind of real time what that award looks like. That is on your school's student accounting portal. You might, some schools have different names for these portals that are related to the name of the school, but basically we're talking about the difference between the federal government site, which is studentaid.gov, and your school's student account site. you have to go to your school site to see what your financial aid award is, loans, grants, work study, whatever it is. After those funds have been dispersed, that's when you should be able to later go to studentaid.gov and see, I want to say like a historical or an archive of aid that's been dispersed. But aid that has been offered is not something that you're going to see inside of studentaid.gov. That's what you need to go to your school's student accounting page for. So this is a great question. And just a reminder that your school works with the information from the FAFSA. So there are two different places that are working with the same information to offer you this financial aid package. But when it comes to the financial aid package, the source you want to go to is your school, because they're the conduit for the money to flow from the federal government through the school and then on to you if there's a refund. All right, great question. Let's move on to the next one. All right, this is also about the FAFSA and financial aid. What's the difference between the student aid account and the school student aid account as it relates to financial aid? So pretty much answered that question, but I want to reiterate this because this is such an important concept. Let's look at the first part of this answer just to spell it out. I want to be very, very clear about the difference between studentaid.gov and the student accounting portal through your school's website. Federal student aid is where you would go to complete the FAFSA for every year you plan to be enrolled. After you complete the FAFSA, studentaid.gov is where you will go to view your FAFSA submission summary, which is going to include your student aid index. Also, you can track your history of dispersed federal loans and grants on studentaid.gov. So studentaid.gov is federal student aid. This is where you can see after the fact what federal student aid you have received. This is not going to show you anything school specific, like a scholarship that you might have received from an academic department or a private scholarship that you may have received from an outside organization. This is just where you go to see your history of federal student aid and to complete the FAFSA for every year that you would like to enroll. Your school is going to use the information from the FAFSA to determine your eligibility for financial aid. And the second part of this answer is going to specify what you will find within the portal for your school student accounting office. When you go to the student account portal, notice it's blank there. The portal is going to be different for every school. This is not a catch-all website like studentaid.gov. This is where you would have to go to your school, and if you're on the website, you would want to look for student financial services, student accounting, or the bursar. Those are the types of names that you see for student account portals. So the financial account for you at your school is going to be unique to your school. Here's where you can see all of the financial aid that you've been awarded. That could be from the federal government, from the state government, or aid from the school. If you receive any other scholarships, you might see outside resources listed on your account. This is also where you would go to see your semester bills. So your tuition and fee charges, room and board, meal plan, all of that stuff, as well as any payments that have been made on your behalf through financial aid or by you. All of that information about covering the bill is going to be included on the school's portal. You will not see that inside of federal student aid. Okay, so just remember, federal student aid only contains information on federal student aid, the FAFSA, and any aid from the federal government that has been dispersed to you already. Your student account gives you the more real-time, boots on the ground, in-school experience. What's the bill? What's the due date? Has it been paid? What financial aid have you received, federal, state, and otherwise? And basically, what is your obligation to the school, or what is your refund that you're going to be getting back processed by the school based on all of the financial aid that you receive? So great question, but you need both of those websites, studentaid.gov and your school student account portal, to get a holistic view of your finances for school. All right, let's move on to the next question. That question is also about the FAFSA. I indicated on my FAFSA that my mom hadn't done her taxes, and I got flagged for verification. Now that she's completed her taxes and I've filled out the school's verification form, should I also update my FAFSA with her tax info? This is a great question, and it brings up something called verification. And a lot of people get selected for it. And it's something that you have to do if you want your financial aid to disperse. So we talked about the FAFSA and completing that at studentaid.gov, and your school using the information from your FAFSA to determine how much aid you're eligible for. Eligible and actually received are two different things. So if you're eligible for something, it doesn't mean automatically you're going to get it. If you're eligible, it means that you can get it after you've met certain requirements. And for some people, verification is a requirement. And during the process of verification, your school's financial aid office will probably ask you to provide additional documentation. Like in this situation, it could be the mother's tax information. Perhaps there are other things that they're looking for. They'll send you the list of requirements, but you have to complete verification in order to get the aid that you're eligible for to be dispersed to you. So let's take a look at the actual answer to this question. It says, submit your tax information and any other required documents to the school, and then your school's financial aid office will update the information. So you don't need to go back and change the FAFSA yourself. Just let the school know that your mom completed her taxes and there's new information for them to assess. And they'll go ahead and take care of the process of updating that information for you. For the student, we highly recommend that you check your email frequently. You want to make sure that you're checking your email because there may be requirements that the financial aid office has added to your student account, and the aid that you're eligible for cannot be given to you by way of disbursement if you have not provided the documentation that's required for verification. Also, if with your mother's tax information included, it turns out that you're eligible for additional aid, you will see updates to your financial aid award. You will see those inside of the student accounts portal for your school. So definitely check your email, check that portal on your school's website to see if there are any updates to your financial aid package. All right, let's move on to the next question. Okay, this one's long. It says, my SAP appeal was approved over 2 weeks ago, but my FAFSA only shows loans right now. I've emailed the financial aid office, but they haven't responded. I'm stressed since school starts soon and fees are due by September the 6th. For those who have been through this, how long does it usually take for the money to show up? Talk about a loaded question. All right, the first thing I want to do is flashback to SAP. SAP stands for Satisfactory Academic Progress. So if you're submitting an appeal, you're going to have to wait for that appeal to be evaluated so that you can regain eligibility for certain types of aid. In this case, the person had the approval on the appeal, but the aid has not dispersed. As for why your financial aid office has not responded yet, that could be a multitude of things. They're still dealing with functionality issues for the 2024-25 FAFSA. It's also the start of the school year. There are a lot of people who are probably wanting to know where the disbursements are. They are being inundated with inquiries, not just about disbursements, but also FAFSA processing. So it might take quite some time before you hear back from someone. Let's go on to the answer to talk about how long it takes for the money to show up. Unfortunately, I can't give you a window like, oh, you'll get your money in 6 to 10 days. All of this depends on the school. Each school has its own schedule of disbursement dates. So if you're a person who's wondering, even outside of a SAP appeal, if you're wondering, where's your refund? When is it going to come? I can't answer that because schools operate on different schedules. They determine what the disbursement date will be. I can tell you, though, that what will delay your disbursement date is if you do not meet the requirements that the financial aid office has set for you. So if you don't provide documents for verification or other documents that might be required, that will delay your disbursement even further. But just to get back to this question, disbursement dates depend on when your school semester starts. The report that's generated from your FAFSA determines how much eligibility you have for federal aid as well as state aid. So if you'd like to take a look at the aid for your current semester, you would not go to studentaid.gov. You would go to your student account through the school. For this student, I'm not sure if they've just been going to studentaid.gov and perhaps the financial aid office has moved forward on that SAP approval and updated their aid package. If they're looking at studentaid.gov, they would not see an update like that. This is where you really have to go to your school to take a look at your financial aid offer to see what you have been awarded. So our recommendation here is if you go to the student accounts portal on your school's website and you do not see that your financial aid package has been updated with the awards that you might not have been eligible for before, you want to reach out to a person. That could be through student accounts. It might be called student accounting, the Bursar, student financial services, to explore your options for perhaps emergency aid. If the appeal has been approved and you basically know that additional aid is coming, but it's really like an issue of not having enough cash right now day to day, some schools will issue you, some schools do emergency loans. And once your aid disperses, they deduct the value of that loan from the aid that dispersed. There are different arrangements that they may offer, but this is something that you definitely have to engage your school about. This is not a studentaid.gov issue. This isn't a call FSA issue. This is on your campus. You need to find out what the options are to get perhaps an advance on your disbursement, or to make sure that your aid has been updated to reflect the fact that that SAP appeal has been approved. All right, let's move on to our next question, which happens to be our last question. All right, that question is, I'm pursuing a dependency appeal due to estrangement from my parents and have been self-sufficient for three years, excuse me. I have all the necessary documents except for a letter from a professional, but I haven't seen any psychologists, lawyers, or therapists who could provide this. Where do I start since these professionals usually charge fees? Before I get to the answer on this, I just want to explain a little bit about a dependency appeal. Some people, you likely hear this referred to as a dependency override. If a student is in undergrad or under a certain age, they're considered a dependent. That's like I dare to say, the default setting for a student in undergrad in terms of how they're classified for FAFSA purposes. You're classified as a dependent. If you are not dependent on your parents, then you would have to provide documentation that they don't provide support for you. And the financial aid office will have a list of everything that's required for you to make a successful appeal. But you basically have to prove that you're not a dependent. And that process of going from dependent to independent is called a dependency override. So this person is basically looking for proof without having to pay. They're looking for proof to corroborate their statement that they are estranged from their parents, they're independent, and they have not received support from their parents for the past 3 years. So let's take a look at the answer. Generally, letters from the following third-party individuals are acceptable: social workers, mental or medical health professionals, clergy members, guidance counselors, teachers, professors or instructors, and law enforcement officers. I think that in this case, if you're looking for a professional that you do not have to pay, this is where I would look for teachers, professors, or instructors that are aware of your situation that you might have, talked to them about, or guidance counselors, because those are people that do not have to be paid in order to engage with you. So I would start with your school, your most recent school, or if you are already in, college or a career school, then one of your instructors during that time who could attest to what you stated, which is that you have not um, been in touch with your parents, or you've been estranged from your parents for the past few years and you don't get support from them. So I'm hopeful that this student is able to get free proof, because I know that it can be quite expensive to engage professionals like this and ask them to provide a document. But without the document, you can't prove that you are independent and move forward with the financial aid process as an independent student. So hopefully they'll be able to take up this advice and get corroboration from one of the free sources that are often acceptable for dependency overrides. All right, that does it for our questions. This time, I want to share a resource, a time-sensitive resource for Marylanders, and that is the Maryland Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit for the tax year 2024. The application is online at the Maryland One Stop portal, and it will be available until 11:59 p.m. on September the 15th of 2024. So that is just about 2 weeks away. You have 2 weeks to complete this application online for a refundable tax credit that can be used to help you pay down your student loan debt. The application does have documentation that's required. You've got to document that you have loans. You've got to document your attendance at a school where you took out the loans. And there's some other questions that you have to answer as well. But you want to make sure that if you are pursuing this, get started ASAP. It's not a lengthy application, but it's also not one of those things that at 11 o'clock on September the 15th, you want to jump on and try to just get started and finish it within the hour. So for more information, please do visit Maryland One Stop and make sure you get those applications in ASAP for the Maryland Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit, which is administered by MHEC. And the application is managed by MHEC, and of course, the tax part of it is flowing through the Office of the Comptroller for the state of Maryland. All right, let's move on to one final resource for Marylanders, and that is the Office of the Student Loan Ombudsman. Maryland is a state that has a dedicated official for student loan issues. If you're experiencing problems with your servicer that you have tried to work out directly with the servicer and it just, has not been resolved or is not moving at all, you can reach out to the ombudsman. Some of the problems that the ombudsman can assist with include failure by the servicer to communicate with the borrower, errors in crediting principal and interest payments, misapplied payments, inaccurate interest rate calculations, billing errors, loan consolidations or modifications errors, and or inappropriate collections activity or tactics. So if you're experiencing any of these issues on an ongoing basis and have not been able to get resolution through your student loan servicer and dealing with them directly, please do engage the ombudsman as a credible third party that can help move your concerns forward and hopefully help you reach resolution faster. All right, I do not see any comments or questions, so I think we took care of everything during the broadcast. I do want to thank you so much for joining me for this, the August 28th edition of Office Hours, presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. Please do stay in touch with us. Our website is mccfw.org. We are on socials, including Facebook, X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram as @the_MCCFW. So please do reach out, stay connected. If you have questions, please tag us on social media, or you can go online to our website at mccfw.org/contact. Also, if the information that you have heard during today's broadcast or any information you have been on the receiving end of from the center, please do reach out, support, tell us so at mccfw.org/support. You can reach out with questions, comments. You can also make a donation or make referrals. We give workshops for employers. We also offer fee-for-service programming, mostly for employers as it relates to public service loan forgiveness, but we're going to have some more programs opening up in October, and we know that plenty of people need the help. You know where to find us, mccfw.org. I'm going to give one last check to comments to see if we have anything else that's come in. And I see none. So at this time, I just want to thank you again for joining us for this, the August 28th edition of Office Hours, presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. This episode will be annotated and added to our YouTube page very soon. And for those of you who have subscribed to our YouTube channel and leave your comments and support, we appreciate you so very much and looking forward to staying engaged. As always, until next time, be well. Bye-bye.